Seattle too. A lot of people have dogs.
Do they? Yeah. It seems like massive. Yeah.
Massive, yeah.
In Australia, where I grew up and where we live now, it's the country, and so to have a dog that is, dogs are working animals. They round cattle and guard the house sort of from. We don't have one, and we don't feel the need for one, but that's sort of the attitude to them.
It's more than that.
Yeah,
it's sinful to have one.
Well, it's a sin to have a pet, of course. Yeah, but even yeah. It's totally unloving. It's totally unloving. Yeah. So, it is a sin to have a pet. Yes. That's God's truth is. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We talked about it in Canada. We talked about it in North Carolina. You have one?
I had one.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a sin on a lot of levels. Yeah. But here it's like intense the way that people view their animals. It's like
and in Austria
not
too.
an animal anymore.
In Austria
it's
it was
like
the same
a
though,
quasi-human. Yeah. Austria was very intense with it as well.
Yeah.
You may have heard the story about Rainbow who walked from Yellowstone back to California to try to get back home. What are animals seeing spiritually that allows them to go so far to travel back to where
they came from?
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, we don't have time. It's It's
Look up the video.
yeah. Okay, is that all of us? Excellent.
Okay.
All right, guys. What we thought we'd do, we thought where we finished at lunchtime was a great place to kind of finish the spiritual content of the weekend. So what we've been doing in a number of places that we're visiting is just giving you the opportunity to learn a little bit about our future plans, Jesus and my own, as well as some of the projects and different initiatives that are happening back at home in Australia in God's Way, which is a non-profit organisation that we are founding members of, but there are other directors of. And they've been industrious, even continuing projects while we've been on this trip for the last 4 months. So I thought we would do that now, quickly, and if you have any questions as we go, please feel free to ask. Oh, we need a microphone runners. All right, so I thought we'd start with talking about divine truth plans. So really, Jesus and I are divine truth. We are. This is us. We run everything involved in delivering God's truth to the earth, if you like. So we manage the website and the YouTube channels and all of these trips. We do all the planning and the booking and the payment and all of those things. It's just the two of us who are doing that all of the time. Any office emails, those kinds of things, it's all handled by one of us. And if you've ever sent an email to our office account, you probably know it's not high on our priority list to answer emails because you probably didn't get a response. So we're hoping that in time there'll be more people who want to come and work with us, but they need to work on a voluntary basis because that's how we work as well. So everything we do is through the generosity of others giving us donations so that we can further this work. Yeah, we do have a website for those of you who are very brand new called divinetruth.com, but unfortunately it's not very up to date. We did have a large project underway over the last couple of years. Jesus and Kate, who was volunteering with Divine Truth, were working on that. Sadly, Kate passed away. Kate's not that sad anymore about that. She's still our dear friend. But it's sad for the website project because that it halted the website project. So if you do want to keep up to date with what we're doing, the best place to go is actually mary.divinetruth.com. It's not because I'm more important. It's just because that's a blog that I had set up many years ago, and it's much more easy for me to just put regular updates there rather than Jesus has to write code to update our website. So that's where you'll find kind of news about us, what we're doing, and when and if we're travelling to various places as well. The other place we'll put news of future events, and I'm going to give you a bit more detail about our plans for future events in a moment, but when and if you want to come to an event either overseas or in Australia, that will be published here, where you've probably got your reservation to come to this event, which is event.divinetruth.com. So any and all events that we hold will be published there. Okay? And the last site I want to tell you about is about donations. Thank you very much to those of you who have donated towards this trip. It's been a big group effort, hasn't it? People in Australia initially donated significant funds to help us get this ball rolling on this. So this is our last presentation in 4 months. We've been away from home for 4 months. We fly home on Tuesday, which it's been a great trip, hasn't it? It's been very intensive. This is our 5th weekend in a row that we've been presenting, and I think we've only had 3 weekends off in 4 months, haven't we? 2, 3, 3. So we've been doing this pretty much every weekend for four months, or 3 days a week, really. Yeah. But it's been a lot of fun. And if you would like to donate towards next year's trip, I'll give you a website where you can do that. It's just simply donate.divinetruth.com. Whoops. You get the idea anyway. Okay. Anything else you want to mention about donations before I talk about the plans? No? We're good? All right. Okay, so there's 3 sites where you can kind of keep up to date with us at all times. I'm already starting to plan next year's trip. Our deep desire, the both of us, is to be able to do this kind of overseas travel annually, at least for the next 4 or 5 years, because we really see the benefit of having these in-person meetings with you. And I don't know how you guys find it, but it's pretty different to watching a video, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, very different. You get to feel us, hopefully, also feel different spirit influences and feel all kinds of things, and come at truth in a more personal way. And that's what we really want to be able to offer people. We can see the benefit, and a lot of people at home have benefited from having that regular contact with us over a number of years consistently now. So we want to be able to do that every year, at least in the North American continent, so whether it's in the US or Canada, and in Europe and England or the UK, kind of. So, yeah, so let's talk about what we're thinking for next year. Does everyone need anything here? I'll take it off. Okay. All right. So already next year, now, some of you have been listening along on this trip, and some of you have been to more than one talk, and our plans have been evolving. So we've been telling you, oh, this is what we're going to do, and now we're telling, oh no, we're going to do this. Well, now this is the latest version of, plan, yes, 5.0. It could change, but it's getting firmer, isn't it, Dole? Yeah. The more we think and feel about it. So yeah. This is the current plan. So, starting in June, the idea is that we will have 4 weeks in each location. Because on this trip we've been moving location every week or 10 days. We've had 3 weeks in San Diego and we had 2 weeks in North Carolina. But at the start of the trip we were a week in Belgium, a week in Austria, 2 weeks in Portugal, 2 weeks in England, a week in Ireland, over to Canada, 2 weeks there. So it was just like changing, moving, and that all takes time and effort and money. So our idea is just to have a month in each location, have less events, but hopefully they can be more relaxed, we can be more relaxed and rested, and also there might be the opportunity to investigate various other things while we're in that location. So we're thinking to start in June in Portugal. We visited Portugal this year. We were in the south of the country. Next year we're hoping to be more central or in the north, because we're quite interested in that area. Okay, and July in the UK, probably England. So we'd have a 4 weeks there. August in Canada. In Canada, we know that we were in Nova Scotia this year. We know that that's sometimes a bit tricky for people to access because it's slightly out of the usual routes for flying, but we do really like the area. We're interested in starting a learning centre there one day in the future, so we are thinking in Canada we'll go back to Nova Scotia. Yep. And then in September would be in the USA. And because of the way flights work for us, basically we'd like to be in North Carolina for our 4-week period because, again, it's an area that interests us in terms of learning centres in the future. And also, we just liked the area, didn't we, when we were there this year. So we're thinking to return there. But because of the way our flights work flying home, we usually have to fly back home via LA. So we are considering perhaps just doing 2 days or something, a 2-day event here in San Diego before we fly home. So that's the potential. But we would definitely do this longer form event that I'm just about to explain to you in North Carolina. Yeah. Okay, so that's the idea, 4 weeks in each place, or 3 to 4 weeks. And this is the format we're thinking for events. So we would have a Saturday and a Sunday, and I'm going to call that day 1 and day 2. So we're basically trying to put a program together in an 8 to 10 day block that would cover various different material. But it would mean that if someone was travelling from interstate or from far away, they'd have the opportunity to attend 2 or 3 events within that time period that would cover different material, and they'd just have to come in for that time period and they can go home again, if that makes sense. So day 1 and day 2 would be a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and they would have like a seminar format, which means Jesus and myself would be presenting material to the audience, largely in a teaching kind of seminar way. And the first day would be almost like an introduction to God's truth, I'll say DT, Divine Truth, similar to Secrets of the Universe. Has everyone seen those videos? You know, it's just like, here's the big shebang. Here's, God, the universe, the spirit world, how it all fits together, the human soul. Something kind of introductory. And that's really good if you've got a friend or a family member or someone you've been telling about divine truth who's never been, who doesn't really know much, and it's totally at their level to
and we'd be
learn
presenting
the basics.
sort of things that are true as well as false.
Yes.
Like, in the sense we talk about what is true and what is false during that presentation.
Similar to what Jesus did with the beliefs of, these are false beliefs, this is the truth. And that's quite helpful for people to sort of understand the basics of God's truth. So that would be day 1. Day 2, it would follow on from the Saturday, so people would come to both days, but it would be sort of an introduction to a theme that we're going to extend in the rest of the week.
Remember, we sort of changed that a bit.
Do we know what we said we were going to do?
You're going to do spirits.
And you were going to do Q&A and the spirit presentation.
Yeah.
No. That was plan 4.0. We're up to 5.0. So no, on Sunday we're not going to do that. We're going to do Q&A, is relating to the day before, and mediumship presentation.
So new people get an experience of like us talking with spirits.
Yes, yep. Yeah, okay. So that would be the first weekend. And what we're going to say that to participate in the rest of the program, you need to come to those 2 days. Yep. Now, day 3 would be on the Wednesday of this week, and it would just be a social. Social or, can I call it experiential? By that I mean, I'll just put experience. I get why you find it hard. Experience. Social or experience. By that I mean, when we were in Austria, we went on a big hike, a day hike with a bunch of people, and that was a great way for everyone to get to know each other, and we could talk about God's truth in relation to nature and different things. So rather than sometimes social things, we just sit around and eat and sort of talk and have another seminar. Sometimes it's good to have an experience where we do something practically, either going for a walk in nature or seeing something, engaging with nature, or there is, in future years, what we hope with the God's Way organisation, which I'll talk about after this, we have what we call humility and practice days. And that's where we come together to do an activity that's productive, that's serving a loving purpose. And God's Way managers run that, and you have the opportunity to receive feedback about how you're practicing the principles that we teach. So that would be the Wednesday. It might not be the full day, might be part of the day, it depends on how we're feeling, largely. All right, okay. Now, day 4, 5 and 6 go together, and the prerequisite is that you've come to Saturday and Sunday, and that you would come to all 3 days, 4, 5 and 6, and they will be the Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And here is more of like what we call an assistance group. So this is where we get practical and we get specific on a theme. So at the moment, the 2 themes we're considering are about sin, understanding sin, or we might talk about understanding God's laws and principles. But it would be more with the idea of giving you practical application and very specific, like teaching you a set of truths that all go together, which is why it's very important that you come to the first 2 days, and then the 3, you come to all 3. Otherwise, if you just decide I'm coming for Saturday and Sunday and you don't come for the Friday, then you end up asking questions of things we've already covered, or it becomes very disjointed for you and not loving to us as presenters. So we're going to call that assistance group. And Jesus and I will develop material. You'll have outlines, handouts, that kind of thing that would be involved in that last 3 days of program. So that would be us. So when we arrive in June at Portugal, we would run a program that is a Saturday, Sunday, the following Wednesday, then the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and so on in each country that we visit. Any questions about any of that? Yeah, just wait for the microphone.
So that covers 2 weekends out of 4 weekends.
Closer to you, Jim.
Oh, so that covers 2 weekends out of 4 weekends.
That's
Are you
right.
going to have another 2 weekends of the same format? No. it's just-
No, not in that country. It's just going to be 1 per country.
Okay.
Yeah.
As Mary pointed out, we want to use the opportunity to visit certain places in those countries in the break in the 2-week period before we have to move to the next one.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things we would like to look at in terms of preparing for what we feel will be later God's Way learning centres. And so we want to sort of examine those areas, have a drive around, look at different areas to get the feel of them and things like that. We'd like to do that if we're looking at the potential of a centre. In USA, the potential of a centre is in Texas, which we've already looked at quite a lot, and also in North Carolina, Tennessee, which we haven't looked at all. So this is one reason why we'd like to look at that area. And the same applies to Canada. We haven't looked at the Nova Scotia area at all before, so we want to just do that. And the same goes with Portugal in the north.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And actually, as you said, it's 2 weekends out of 4, and by the time we travel, it really only gives us a week to 10 days to sort of look around the area before we have to pack up and go somewhere else and set up at the new venue. Yeah. On this trip, we've been presenting for 3 days, but usually we arrive. We have to check into our accommodation, get our food, get ourselves sorted out. Then sometimes, if we're lucky, we have a day just to be with ourselves and process something. And then usually we have the setup at the venue, and then we have the 3 days. And then on the Monday or the Tuesday, we've been flying again to the next location. So there's really been almost no time for sort of looking around an area,
Meeting up with people socially.
Yeah, we've hardly been able to have social events, and we'd like to do that more, because that's another way that we can engage with truth with you in a more informal way. Yeah. Yeah. Someone else. Yep. If we go, Sai, and beside you. Yep.
I'm just wondering if you always planned to do this, or if there was any significant change that made you want to do this, like learning centers and everything?
No. Learning centers is something that Jesus has been planning probably since you remembered who you were. Yeah. So and we've been talking about them for many years. But there's a number of reasons why we haven't travelled in the last, say, 5 or 10 years, really. One was about trying to set up God's Way in Australia. So I'll talk about God's Way in a minute, but basically that's a non-profit member-based organisation, and the idea is for that company to be the vehicle to actually build learning centres around the world. But that organisation is really dependent upon people being able to uphold the Constitution. So Jesus wrote a Constitution for the company, which is an excellent read, actually, if anyone would like to view it. It's on the God's Way website, which I'll put up in a minute. But, really, we spent a lot of time in the last 5 years in particular with people, just helping them with their spiritual progress, so that they were in a position to actually be able to run the organisation and continue their development while we're not there. But in terms of presenting God's truth to people in person, that's always been a passion for both of us. It's just various factors, like not having enough donations to actually fund it has really prevented a lot of our overseas travel probably as well, hasn't it? Yeah. If you just go, did you still have ASA, is it? Yep. ASA.
For the Wednesday, when you talk about like the social experience and like doing stuff around like humility and practice and stuff, because this would all be in San Diego, would we travel? Actually, this would not happen in San Diego. This would happen in North Carolina, if we came through San Diego, we would probably just do a 2-day event. Okay.
That probably wouldn't even cover the intro to divine truth. It would just be something else. Maybe we pick up on the soul aspiration thing we talked about today.
Yeah. For the Wednesday though, I was wondering, like, would we be willing to travel, like, to go to other places in order to do like the humility and practice stuff? Like you said, like you wanted to build like a learning center in Texas or something. Like, would we ever like travel to like go help build it or something like that for the Wednesday?
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason why we want to hold these events in the locations where we're thinking of having learning centres is that in the future that we do anticipate that, yes, we would hold a seminar and then we could have a 3-day humility and practice for people who want to come from wherever in the world to help start building things on a learning centre. Yeah. Cool. But on this trip, on this next, in 2025, we're probably not up to that. We haven't got the people for a learning centre.
Not probably, we definitely haven't, because it's all about the development of people. And to be frank, there's no one developed enough in the USA to handle running a learning centre in the USA. Yeah. And it's taken us nearly 8 years in Australia to get 3 people in a state where they could run the centre while we're not there. Yeah. So with all the centres, they need to run without us being there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that requires a deep level of humility on the part of the people running the centre, as well as a strong value, like like that they want to live their lives by God's principles.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to travel and engage with people more, so that you can understand what that really means in practice.
Yeah.
And then just wondering where at in Texas. You don't know yet? Okay.
Well, we're still deciding between North Carolina and Texas, or Tennessee and Texas. So this is why we want to look at the North Carolina, Tennessee area, because we want to be able to compare it with what we've seen in Texas.
Okay. Thank you.
If you just pass behind you, Asa.
May I ask what other criteria you're looking at in these locations? Like, is it like, are you feeling pulled towards these areas for people? Or is it like land? May I ask?
Yeah. In part, it's related to where we think there'll be like a long-term livability should any major changes happen on the Earth. In part, it is about, I suppose, inspiration. Do you want to answer this, because you're much more
I'll answer
you're
it.
much more passionate about this? Yeah.
Firstly, it's a lot to do with the people. So number one is finding the people in a particular location. So it's more about the people than the location, to be honest.
That's the prerequisite for the centre.
Yeah.
But we haven't necessarily chosen these locations because there's already people there, have we?
No.
No.
There's other reasons why we've chosen the locations, but obviously none of them are effective without people. You really need people in the right space, and it's going to take it's at least a 10-year project to get people into the right space where these things can happen. But one of the reasons why we've chosen these locations just to look at for the moment is we're just doing sort of preliminary investigations, I suppose you could say, about the locations. And these locations I chose nearly 20 years ago. So, and the main reason why I chose them, there's many reasons why I've chosen them. Some of them are related to the general stability of the area politically and so forth. Some of them are related to the general stability of the area with regard to Earth events. Some are related to the we're choosing on purpose, usually areas with a low socio-economic sort of consideration, because we find generally that people in low socio-economic areas are more open to truth, but also because we can bring some kind of enhancement to the local community by being there.
The agricultural kind of consideration as well, isn't it?
And also the damage of the land. So a lot of the places we're looking at are highly damaged land. The beauty of choosing highly damaged land is that you can illustrate how to repair it, and the contrast between the land itself and then the repair is quite large, and so that allows you then to illustrate a lot of basic truths about how the soil affects the environment and things like that. So it's a very strong, like literally hundreds of reasons why we've selected certain areas, and
which is why I went where to start. Yeah.
And so and at the moment we're still in the investigative stage,
and
these were areas that we chose when we were in the spirit world, and now we want to just make sure that without the UK being one of those.
Yes, it's just Portugal, Canada and the USA we're looking at.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Because the reality is probably Ireland rather than the UK is probably a more suitable location at this stage. But there's certain areas that we've chosen way before we came here to Earth, and now I would just want to check them all just to see whether what we chose 60 years ago has changed in any way or has been affected in any way by the 60 years of time that then causes us to maybe rethink our choices. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's all lovely. And I just wondered if there was more divine truthers in the U.S. and where they were. I've always kind of wanted to be more amongst them.
Yeah.
I was just curious if that's how you were choosing.
No, not really. It's
No, there's a lot of factors because, there are some areas, as you know, here is a very unstable area.
Seismically unstable.
Seismically, and also probably on a number of fronts, like politically, economically, socially. There's a lot of high, in this area here, there's a high focus on self, a high focus on selfish activity. And we want to be, these centres to be in a place where there's more of a focus on providing things for others rather than being a selfish focus. Mm-hmm. So, there's reasons why we've chosen certain areas that include those kind of considerations. The general feel of the area in terms of the majority of people who are there and what they're and their general focus towards selfishness is not something that we want to promote or we want to encourage people to see that a part of you loving is also you learning to spend your time loving others, doing something that's productive for others, rather than just for self. And so there's certain things about these locations that also mean that will have to be done, because there's not going to be a lot of necessarily a lot of support in these locations for, and you're going to have to learn love more quickly, as a result.
I have a fear coming up that I want Divine Truth to grow, but I am worried for you and for what could happen as far as people opposing it, and especially in the States.
Yeah.
And you probably don't want to respond to that because it is a fear.
Well, no, we're happy to.
Yeah, I think. I think that we're not that worried about that. Mm. Yeah. We both feel that if we live in harmony with God's laws, then we're going to be the most protected, if you like. And we also feel that there are people in the States who are starting to be interested in truth. There's a lot of people who are opposed to it, I agree, and a lot of fear in the United States. Mm. But if we're not here speaking the truth, then the sincere people can't hear it and can't benefit from it. So we feel pretty passionate about doing that.
Yeah. We've been here many times before, obviously, and generally we find that people come for a little while, listen to some truth, and then after a while either believe that we're not the people we're claiming to be or don't want to practice the things we teach. And so generally, the more addicted the society is, the more that happens rather than the less that happens. Yeah. And so we know that many of you might not see us in the future. That's how generally things work. But one of the reasons why I had the discussion with you this morning that I had was so that you could see that actually you can change and you can grow and things can change, and this is what we're trying to promote with people, that they can change. And primarily we're focused on trying to help the people who are sincere about their change. Mm-hmm. And to become sincere, you are going to need to deal with your fear. Because, there are many people who will try to oppose your change for lots of different reasons. But as Mary said, the law, God's laws, if you live in harmony with them, you're the most rewarded that you could be. And it will only be people who choose to break the law that will harm you in the end. So there's a possibility of Mary and I being harmed, of course, but it's not something that we sort of focus on very much. We feel about it. I've had, right at the beginning, I had lots of feelings I had to work through about it.
I've had lots.
And Mary's had lots too.
Feelings about it.
Yeah. So, but we do feel that doing these things is very important, so that more and more people can become sincere. Helping more people become sincere. Yeah. And unless you have sort of that face-to-face sort of confrontation of error that needs to occur, then sincerity is very, very difficult to achieve. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons too why we want to do this sort of regular.
Never apologise for crying.
Yeah, never.
Never apologise for that.
So there's many reasons why we want to do what we want to do
I'm just thinking because we're sort of starting to talk about God's way, maybe we'll just give a bit of an intro to that. Has everyone got this? I'm going to take it down. Yep, okay.
Yeah, so when we thought about all of the things relating to what we would like to do in the future, you know, we had these thoughts way before we came here. Like Mary and I knew we could return back to Earth in 1935. So from then, we've been looking at what we would do when we came. Does that make sense? And already many of the things we're currently doing are things that we plan to do then. And there's other things, of course, that we're not yet in a state where we're ready to do them, or we feel other people are not yet in a state where it's ready to happen. So, and as time goes on, we feel those things will change. So this is why we've focused on God's way. Mary and I have focused a lot of energy in the last 8 years on God's way, because we've called it God's way because that's what we're teaching. God's way, God's truth,
and it's
God's
really,
way of life.
Yeah, it's really a foundational value of the organisation that we're not doing things our way, that we're seeking God's way to do everything. So one of the purposes of the organisation is to find God's way in relation to many earthly endeavours. So things like medicine, things like education of children, things like environment and the recovery of the environment, all of these kind of engineering, all kinds of endeavours that are currently engaged on Earth.
Food production.
Housing, all of water harvesting, water storage, water sharing, all of these things, where the aim is to apply God's principle to all of these kinds of endeavours and demonstrate practical examples of better ways to do all of those things on Earth. And
well, you could say more loving ways.
Yes,
Couldn't
which
you?
is always better, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the primary vehicle for that is learning centres. So these centres that we want to set up are not centres where people will come and live and have a community and live in a bubble away from society.
So Mary said, not that.
Not that. Not that at all. Definitely not. What it is a centre that any person can visit and see practical demonstrations of God's way in action. So that's in terms of the way that people conduct themselves, the people who are volunteering there and sharing information, as well as seeing practical examples of how we can build houses in a more loving way, how we can grow crops in a more loving way, how we can recover from the damage of farming in a loving way. So at the moment in Australia, there's 2 learning centres, you could say, that God's Way already owns. They've been donated to the organisation. So similar to Divine Truth, God's Way is completely come about through donations. So people have donated quite a lot of assets to the organisation already. So a lot of land, you have to tell the figures because I always...
About 1,000 acres of land.
1,000 acres over 4 different properties.
4 different properties.
A large bulldozer, an excavator, tractor, big tractor trailer, a lot of tools and equipment for us to do. One of the major projects that God's Way is already engaged in is environmental recovery. Because we live in a farming community and 3 out of the 4 of the properties that the organisation now owns are ex-farming land. So Jesus has designed a really beautiful project called the Terrace Project, which is about changing the way that water flows across the land, so keeping it there longer. And we've purchased over 600 different varieties of native Australian seeds, trying to build back biodiversity into the land, working on restoration of soil. So very large scale kind of project that we already have underway that a lot of people are participating in a kind of in these humility and practice days that we hold regularly. So that's just one of the projects that's going on. There's quite a lot in terms of environment and construction already happening in Australia. Yeah. Asa?
I could talk about this like forever, but I have like 100 questions, and I realized before coming here that it's probably just best to go to one of the to Australia and and then just like walk around to just see all of you guys are doing. Like Jesus, I saw like you just got like concrete forms, and that just like made me so. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have so many questions and stuff. So I was wondering if you could talk about because I've never like traveled that far before and stuff. So if you can like I've seen this.
We'll
like,
get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're heading there.
We're heading there,
We're
yeah.
definitely
Yeah,
heading
yeah.
there. So yeah. So we have these learning.
Is there any
centres.
questions about the centres themselves
Any questions
at
about
this
the
stage?
centres? Yeah. Si?
I just wanted to say that if you do choose Tennessee, then you might have some competition from Isha Foundation by Sadhguru, because they have a big center in Tennessee as well.
Well, I don't
know
see
if
anybody
we
as
have
competing.
a competition.
so-
No. Yeah.
we're not
out
interested
to
in
like
competing.
win people. So it's
Yeah,
not. We're not
yeah.
competing with anyone. You know, we
Yeah.
love everyone, regardless of their belief system, and we feel very inclusive in our hearts towards
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. So,
Andy?
just down the front here. If you just leave your hand up, Mandy.
It's just a question. I don't know if it's the time for it, but the environmental recovery, looking at Tennessee area where they get a lot more rain.
Yep.
Do you know already what you're going to be focusing on, since you won't have to be so focused on rain collection and
We still got
terracing?
to look at water collection and storage because most of these places are highly reliant on bores, underground bores, or on supply of water from governmental institutions. And we're more interested in looking after our own water. So we still need to look at the water situation. Of course, with there more rainfall, it's a bit easier to look at. But the land down there, even though it looks nice and green and pretty, it's actually still very, very damaged. We did a few walks while we were down there, and very, very little of the native environment, native animals, native birds, insects actually exist today that existed there 300 or 400 years ago.
Do you think you're going to be focusing on getting rid of invasive species there?
Well, partly, but the bigger thing we're more focused on is trying to bring back a lot of the native species of animals, birds and plants to a location, and then illustrating through that the benefits that that brings to humans in the same location.
In God's way, a lot of the focus we have is not just on the practical, say, invasive species management, but we look at the causes of every problem.
Yeah.
So that's very instilled in every participant who comes to God's way, that what we're seeing in the environment is an effect of sin.
Of soul-based problems.
Soul problems that create physical effects. And so every time we go to a location, we're very investigative
Yeah.
of, you know, what has been the soul-based cause of the issues that are now in the environment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So things like invasive species, obviously God created every plant with a purpose. Once a plant becomes invasive, there's a number of soul-based reasons why that's
happening. The same goes with domestic animals and things like that, which are also invasive. There's a reason why most humans don't see them as invasive, but there's a whole reason behind why we view domestic animals as more important than native animals and so forth. And this is why native animals are slowly disappearing from the planet. And when I say slowly, that's probably not true. It's more like rapidly disappearing. There's huge amounts of extinction occurring on the planet at the moment, worst it's ever been for a long, long time. And there's no event causing it. See, in the past, when extinctions occurred, generally there was like a cataclysmic event, like an asteroid hit or something like that. In the case of what's going on now, we're doing it. Humans are doing it, you know, and this is something we can correct. And if we illustrate the benefit of having a wide variety of species around us, because it brings a lot of benefits to humans as well, then you can start to sort of put more forefront in people's minds that actually we need to learn how to live in harmony with the native environment rather than destroying it all the time. And these particular principles are an important part of love, not only an important part of love of the environment, but also an important part of love of self. Because if you are living in an unclean or a damaged environment and you're creating more of an unclean or damaged environment yourself, then it means that you don't have a very good love of self, and you also don't have a very good love of others that are coming after you. So there's a lot of very important spiritual principles we can illustrate through these things.
Many. And even the attitude towards the invasive species, it's not like a lot of management of feral animals and plant species is done with a lot of hatred and anger. Mm-hmm. So we really also focus on the fact that in order to be effective, personal responsibility for sin is required, and also to the plant or the animal is created by God, and it's instinctually doing something that God created it to do. It's the human input that has created the problem,
and particularly the human soul's desires.
Yes, yeah. So there's a lot of love-based principles that we try to bring into all of those activities. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Sai again. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, based on what you've described, have you thought of making these, you know how contractors, while they're building something, they're going to do this animation where, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Have you thought of doing what living by God's laws and God's principles is going to look like for the environment and for everyone, like all humans?
Well, it's a bit fraught, isn't it? We do dream and we do discuss ideas in terms of physical things that we want to have on centres and things. But, in order to live God's way, that's a personal thing that comes from your soul condition. And the danger of putting, this is what you do if you're living in harmony with God's laws, people try to emulate that without making a soul-based change.
We don't want to encourage your desire.
No.
We don't want to nurse you into a desire. We want you to have one for yourself. Because you created it. Yeah. Because it's your will that created it. So we don't sort of encourage the whole idea of, encouraging desire and inspiring people all the time to have a desire.
Jesus and I are both, we're not bad public speakers. We could get up here and fire you guys up and you'd be crying and but that's just so anti-God's way, because that's us trying to manipulate your will. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so nothing we do is like that. Nothing we do.
Yeah, the second part of your question, Sai, is that we've got to get some very basic essentials done before we can do other things. So there is, like, for example, Mary and I we've produced, over the last 7 or 8 years, we've probably done 400 extra seminars that none of you have ever heard anything about.
Yeah.
We don't have any means or time to edit the material or to take videos ourselves while we're presenting, or, a lot of people expect us to nurse them through everything. And, at some point it's going to require a cooperative effort from dedicated people who love the truth and who have the truth in their heart in order to share truth worldwide. And
if you're dependent on us going, well done, Sai, thanks, this is going to be great. If you keep doing that, that's actually, you're not serving the loving purpose. We're serving you and getting you to do something.
But not even that. There's also the fact is that there are very few sincere people on earth at the moment who are willing to put in a life-based effort into something that they're going to do for the rest of their life for free. For other people, right? Because everybody who's working with us in Australia who has any position in the organisation does it for free. They don't get paid, and we don't get paid either. We do everything, and we hope we get enough donations or gifts to survive.
But the basic principle of God's way and divine truth is that we give gifts to the world. It's
based on our capacity to do so. And at the moment, the capacity to do so is quite low because there is not a lot of people who have that kind of desire, a strong desire to do these things for free for others without there being much personal reward but a lot of attack. Yeah. Very few people in the world have that kind of desire. Now, we're hoping in future that will change. And as that changes, then obviously more and more things can be done by a larger group of people. So there's all this material we've shared. Every week we share more material. And a lot of it does get recorded, but a lot of it doesn't get shared because there's no one to share it. There's no person who can spend that time. Mary and I can't because we're too busy sharing more material.
A part of the reason why we didn't travel, which was an earlier question you had, was also because in 2016 we did 3 assistance groups in Australia and then another in 2019, and the only people who were there to set up the recording, do the recording, especially in 2016, take the video data off all the videos, take the audio off all that, put it on, sync it all up, do all the editing, output it, put it up on the website, put it up on YouTube. That was the 2 of us. So we've learned if we actually want to share truth with people, we can't be responsible for the production of it as well. Otherwise, it takes more time in the production than the presenting, and the value is in the presenting rather than, for the best use of our time, particularly Jesus' time, is to spend time sharing what he's already gained with you guys.
The other thing we've found is that videos have hardly any effect on a person's will.
Yeah.
Like they are an ineffectual way of having any... Like everyone nowadays is so used to just watching a video for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and thinking, oh yeah, and then they go away and forget about it pretty much. And most of the people we've met who've watched our videos have no idea what we're teaching still. Like hardly any idea at all. And we see them trying to apply things based on their interpretation, but it's often false. So we need to be in front of people saying, no, what you're interpreting us saying there is actually false. Like you using your mind, for example, is actually useless. Unless we're face-to-face saying that, then the person's going to use their mind and think, and then 5 years later, not much change will have happened. And that's because they use their mind the entire time to change without understanding their soul, without actually understanding their emotions and things like that. So we've had to focus our attention on a lot of those things. In addition to that, Mary and I, our primary focus is our own progress, because we know that we must progress in order for things to become more effective in terms of what we share. So we've got to balance carefully how much time and energy and effort we use helping others versus how much time and energy and effort we use to help ourselves. The feeling we have is that it's hypocritical for us to not heal ourselves and then expect you to listen to what we teach in order to heal yourself, right? It is far more effective first that Mary and I heal ourselves before we heal anyone else.
On that note, if it's okay to ask, I don't know if anybody else asked this. Would you mind sharing which sphere each of you might be in?
No,
I don't really want to.
It doesn't matter, and we have already shared that with on other
in
groups
another
anyway.
group
Somebody
on
else
this
asked.
trip, yeah.
I don't know why you're all so worried about all that. I think it will become pretty plain when we have made these shifts to connect to our soul fully to you, when that happens. A lot of people on earth believe that it should happen like within a few years or whatever. We have always known that that's not the case. We know enough about what we've observed in 2,000 years in terms of what sin we have versus how long it's going to take to get rid of it. And so we're not very... We're focused on doing that, but we're not very worried about the impression that leaves you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. If anything, you should learn from our example that it's going to take a while and you're going to have to be dedicated and you're going to have to want it, and it's going to have to be a life thing that you choose to do, not just something that's going to be a weekend thing or something like that. Our example will demonstrate to you how to do it, right? So this is one reason why we're very focused on making that happen. But also many of you have no idea the level of arrogance you're in or the level of resistance you're in at this stage. And that is something that anything other than a face-to-face is going to be very hard to correct, because unless we're face to face with you, we can't. If you're watching a video, you go, "Oh, yeah, that doesn't apply to me. That doesn't apply to me either. That doesn't apply to me. I got that. I already knew that." You know, in your mind, you're thinking these things, right?
Yeah.
And we get so many letters from everybody saying how well they know everything and how much they've washed and now they know everything, and isn't it wonderful? And they can come and assist us now because they know so much. And the feeling we have is there's not a single time, sometimes not a single thing they know in their heart yet, right? And so there's a deep misunderstanding about how to progress God's way. And this is one reason for our trip. This trip is to help you come to terms with how to progress God's way versus how you understand things intellectually, which is not progressing God's way. Yeah. So there's a lot of things we're trying to correct, and we also feel that videos are not very effective on a lot of levels. They take a lot of time to produce, a lot of energy and effort, and sometimes they can help in terms of the introduction of a topic to a person. But when it comes to the deep amount of consideration that's going to have to be given by the average person to their sin and to the truths, some other methods might be far more effective, such as books and stuff like that. But of course, Mary and I don't have the time to do all of these other things and write books at the same time. And so there's a lot of things that we're just trying to balance at the moment in terms of what's the best course of action for us to take that's going to bring the most amount of benefit to yourself at the moment, while at the same time allowing us to progress and to get some of the endeavours we have underway. Does that make sense? It's sort of like a balancing act in terms of how much time do we have versus how much energy we have versus how many helpers we have versus how much money we have to get things done.
Yep.
Do you happen to have some kind of an estimate of how much help you might need to get the content out, or any other?
Oh, I'd love to have millions of people.
We could, yeah. The amount of material that we have
produced,
and the amount that, like, there's transcripts. There's been.
You could have a team of 20 people working full time, and they still wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and I have a big desire to create books from the transcripts, so to lift material that's already been presented and put it more into a sequential sort of, not a informal presentation, but more like a reference book that people can learn basic principles and concepts of God's way. So, like, how many people do you have? Because that's how many we could use to do what we have big plans.
But they have to be in a good space.
Yeah, they're not just, that's the thing. A lot of people think they can help, but unless they love God's way, and by that I mean the way of living God's way, unless they love that and they want that, it's not going to work.
No. Historically, we've found that anybody who's tried to help, we start to address their lack of desire to do things God's way. They eventually get upset and angry with us, and then they leave anyway. So in the end, you end up starting a whole heap of things that you can't finish because people have gotten angry and upset. And we're beyond all that now,
yes.
Sort of thing.
We're
what we want to
that.
do now is just, we're happy to wait until there's a group of people who are in that good space.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And it's really important for everybody hearing Divine Truth to understand that unless you're in that good space, there's very little you can do to help, no matter what skills you have.
Yes.
And in fact, what we've found is that we finish up training the persons with skills. If they are in a good space, you can train them to do anything. But if they're in a bad space, no matter what they know, it's like impossible to train them, like absolutely impossible.
And what Jesus means by a good space is, remember today we had the conversation about condition versus aspiration. Yeah. The good space is the aspiration, you know, when you really want
and the strength of it.
Really, the passionate aspiration to grow and live God's way. It's an asset to any organisation, God's way, Divine Truth, and you can pretty much do any job within the organisation.
And any other organisation in the world is going to be great for that.
You're going to be a great employee as well, or a great volunteer for any organisation.
Yeah. The difference is, for a lot of people helping us, is that we're all doing it voluntarily. And for a lot of people, money is one of their biggest problems that they have. It's a huge problem in almost every Western society. how much everybody worries and thinks about money all the time. And what we've found is the people who deal with that end up getting enough donations in order to... So we don't actually... We do occasionally donate to people who are helping us. But now what we're doing more and more is we're getting them to work through their emotional feelings about money, right? In order... So we pay for a lot of other things, but they have to work through their emotional injuries about money if they're going to be of any benefit to a voluntary organisation. So in God's Way, Mary might just explain the layout.
Yes, I'd like to talk about this. Yeah.
You need to include directors in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
So this organisation, God's Way, has certain laws that govern it, and that is that members actually govern the organisation. So in order to be a member of God's Way, you must first participate in God's Way, you must become a volunteer, and then you kind of if you meet a certain set of requirements, you can become a member. And that gives you voting rights within the organisation.
And the requirements under the terms of the Constitution are all spiritual.
They are, yeah. I was just about to say something.
I know, but they had to be said.
Yeah, I was going to say it, yeah. So, in order to be a member, you must meet the requirements laid out in the Constitution, and they're all about your soul aspirations, actually. Members govern the organisation in that they elected the directors who actually make decisions about projects, money,
day-to-day
administer
operations.
the whole organisation, accounting, all of that. So both Jesus and I have been directors of God's Way for quite a long time. We just resigned just before this trip so that we could come on this trip, and there's actually 3 other directors running the organisation now. Their names are Eloisa, Cornelius and Phoebe, and you can learn about them on godsway.net. They're lovely people. I'm sure you'll enjoy their company if you ever meet them. Mm-hmm. So basically, though, because people often... so everyone within that organisation, within these 3 tiers, if you like, which I'll explain the other 2 tiers in a moment, but they are all voluntary. Nobody receives a salary or a wage, even though being a director in particular is a full-time job. So the 3 directors, that's all that they do. They run God's Way now. And they also have management roles within the organisation, so they not only take care of all the finances and making project decisions. Jesus and I obviously are involved in the project decisions and the direction of the company a lot. As founding members, we're founding members. But the directors also have management roles, so when you come to a humility and practice day, usually one of the directors will be managing you as well. Cornelius also runs the whole construction branch, so he's involved in construction. And while we've been away, the 3 of them almost single-handedly have built how big's the shed, babe?
75 feet by 30 feet.
Shed on their own, the 3 of them. So they're very practical, motivated people. That's the direction.
It's a water collection shed for water storage.
Yes, yeah. So it's got a big roof that's going to collect the water, and the tanks are stored underneath it. Yeah. If you go to godsway.net, you'll see pictures of what they've been doing. Yeah. Okay. But in order to become a member, you must first pass through these lower kind of.
I don't like calling them lower. They're more just.
Lower levels of responsibility is what I was going to say.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that, because everybody who comes has a responsibility to uphold the Constitution. It just depends upon which of these people do it with the passionate desire to do it. So what we find generally is participants generally like the Constitution, but they generally don't uphold it very much in their day-to-day personal life, and they generally don't hold it very much when they come to participate either. And so they need somebody to guide them. The same goes with volunteers. They have usually a higher desire to uphold the Constitution than the participants do, but the volunteers often still break God's laws here and there, and they want to break God's laws even when they're volunteering. And so they need somebody who's more developed than that, more developed in love than that, to basically manage them, to take care of them and make sure that they're aware that these things are occurring. So
it's passion and aspiration that means you're no longer a participant, become a volunteer.
well, it's not just that, is it? It's also condition. Like the condition has to change in the soul for you to progress to become a member. The demand of the organisation's constitution is, unless your condition changes, you will never be a member. Basically, that's how it works.
That's right.
And the only way you can become a member is not by paying a fee or anything else, but by your condition changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to try to explain, though, what the difference is between the
Sure.
three in terms of practicalities.
Yeah. But I just
it's
don't
very
agree with the
important.
terminology you're using sometimes.
Which was what? Which the
Lower levels and all that.
Yeah, no, there's no hierarchy, if you like. There's no hierarchy. Like nobody is treated with more importance
Than the other.
But members do have certain responsibilities that volunteers
Don't
and
have.
participants don't have, and that's why you have to kind of qualify to be a member, because you will have more responsibility and you do have more power within the organisation just through the fact that you vote on decisions.
Not just because of that, because we're also, the members are responsible for upholding the constitution of the organisation. They are responsible for enacting the law governing the organisation. And the law governing the organisation is fundamentally God's laws turned into a document that also satisfies humans' laws.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So that's why it's worth reading the Constitution.
It's such a good read.
Yeah.
It's such a good read. And honestly, we have had a member who's 12, so it's not an age-based thing. It really is about how much you live by the Constitution and you desire to live by the Constitution. So, question over there.
And I'm thinking this is the principle of loving governance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So this is God's way. Well, that's what it all is.
that's right.
Yes.
Right? That
That's
we're
right.
all equal,
Yeah.
but those in a higher condition are better able to uphold God's loving laws and teach those who
To
are.
others.
Yes.
That's right.
And that, as Jesus said, is very much based on condition, the actions come from the condition.
Yeah.
The governance comes
So
from
it's not
the
based
condition.
on your skills or your knowledge or anything else.
Or your title or your worth, actually. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
condition.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, I obviously agree. But, but I guess I'm talking about this because I'm leading to talking about the humility and practice days, which is because I know somebody asked about them. So basically the organisation is run by members. Directors and founding members make decisions about the projects that are going to happen within the organisation. And then we make open certain days where volunteers and participants can come and assist. But one of the prerequisites for coming is that you want to give gifts, that you love God's way, and you at least have some aspiration towards living it. So for anyone interested in coming, that it's very important that you understand that. It's not for you to get something. If a lot of people come just to be given feedback.
And they go home within 5 minutes, don't
yes. You'll find the managers are very hot on that, and they will send you home because that is absolutely against the Constitution. The Constitution of the organisation says that it's about giving gifts. So, but there are humility and practice days where people can come. There's a certain set of actual legal requirements that if you do want to come out to Australia, you're welcome to come, but you must meet these requirements. Some of them are training in terms of just basic safety training that you have to do. You have to get a certificate that you can get online, as well as filling out some deeds and so forth, and having various protective clothing. So that but if you wish to do that, you are welcome to do that. You just need to let the organisation know that you're coming. Now, people who participate for some time, there is a sort of a probationary period of 6 months to see if people are really sincere in their desire to give gifts and to live God's way. And if at that time they wish to become a volunteer, then they can express that desire, and the directors will consider that. And if they feel that they meet the requirements of a volunteer, which is really someone who's just, if you like, got some more aspiration to live in harmony with the Constitution, but perhaps they're not.
And also generally more loving, so their condition is also better.
Yes. So it's condition and aspiration. Thanks for
Both.
correcting me. I
Both,
keep forgetting. Yeah. So they, So then a person might become a volunteer. They need to be a volunteer for a period of at least 6 months before they can become a member. And again, this is sort of like a loving provision within the organisation to ensure that when a person becomes a member, they have actually gone through a process that's been observable to other members and the directors to see that there is sincerity there is a condition of love there, and there is an ongoing aspiration to live God's way. So that just tells you a little bit about the structure of the organisation, and also that if you do wish to come out to Australia and participate in Humility and Practice Days, you'd be coming as a participant. You're not a volunteer within the organisation because, frankly, at times people's condition is such that they're not actually giving that much. They are
taking a lot.
They are taking
It's a lot of effort to manage participants.
Yes.
It's a lot less effort to manage a volunteer.
Yes.
A volunteer is naturally more loving and also wants to give more gifts, and so they're easier to manage. But a participant generally comes with the idea that they're giving gifts, but frequently it's a pretty arrogant idea that they are, and they've got to be corrected in a lot of ways. And so the participants generally take a lot of effort to look after on the part of the members.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. But we do see that it is a gift that the organisation gives to help people to come to understand what it means to give gifts, if you like. So people come, and as long as you have some desire to grow in this way and you feel that you want to give gifts, you will probably receive a lot of feedback as to where you're missing the mark on that. But if you're sincere, then you will grow in that process and you will come to learn more about what it means to love. And that's one of the gifts that we currently give to people coming. Yeah.
Most people who are participants generally dig their heels in. You know, every time you hear something that you don't want to hear about yourself, most people dig their heels in. You know, I don't want to go any further than that. And as a result of that, most participants end up being asked to go home. So when you do come, make sure that you come with a heart that wants to give gifts and wants to grow and wants to change and has some aspiration to do that.
Wants to see yourself, your soul condition.
Yeah, most who have come already, a lot of them have come with the idea, I'm in a pretty good place and I reckon I can help people now. And they come with that kind of attitude, only to find that within the first day, usually whatever jobs we've given them have exposed that attitude is not real. You know, they've got a lot of problems with their attitudes. And so a lot of it's about sorting out people's unloving attitudes as well.
Yeah, and so keep in mind that the invitation or the opportunity, I would say, is there for anyone who wants to participate in being a participant.
Yeah.
If you go to godsway.net, there's a tab called Get Involved, and there's more information there about what you need to do and how things work. But keep in mind that that opportunity is only available to people who are sincere, who demonstrate that sincerity. So you may come for as long as we find you to be sincere, or for as short as we find that you're insincere. And it's the prerogative of the manager and the directors, the manager on the day and the directors, to say whether or not you can continue to participate. Yeah.
Yep. So important also to acknowledge, though, that obviously if a participant can't complete the legal requirements to become a participant, then of course they will never be able to become a volunteer or a member either. The legal requirements are fundamentally that you can understand what safety is, what loving safety is. And so if there's a child of 5 obviously they won't understand safety to a complete degree, so frequently a child of 5 wouldn't be able to become a member, but a child of 12 can easily understand such things, and so they could become a member. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, any questions about any of that? Asa? Statement. Yeah, we'll see how long it goes. Yeah.
So for like I have like, I'm a fellow plotter, so I have like ideas for like humility and practice days. Like if you guys wanted to,
You'd be kicked out within 5 minutes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot to learn about giving gifts. So,
It's very arrogant for you to believe that what you feel and know is better than these people who have had constant daily experience with what they're doing for years and years now, and also our constant feedback for that many years as well. Very arrogant to believe that you would know better than them. And so, the average person comes with a lot of arrogance. Now, we're not saying don't come if you've got a lot of arrogance. We're saying if you have a lot of arrogance, it's going to be exposed very, very rapidly. And most of the young men who come have the worst arrogance, actually, than almost anybody else who comes. And so most of the young men have found it very challenging as soon as the day begins, pretty much. So, so just every time you have this sort of attitude, I know better, I know this, I know that, most people don't realise that Mary and I have had a large involvement in making some plans about this to help us identify sincere people. And so, the projects we've got already occurring are great at identifying sincere people. Like when I say great, like I said, within 5 to 10 minutes oftentimes identifying whether the person's sincere or not. Yep. And usually in the course of a day, usually we have, our directors have assessments every day of whether they feel somebody's a sincere person or not. And frequently they don't even need to wait to the end of the day. That it's 5 minutes in, it's like, insincere, go home. And then the person says, can I come back? They say, yeah, as long as you deal with the lack of sincerity. So they come back the next day and frequently get sent home then as well. And then the next day get sent home, next day get sent home, next day. And after 5 or 6 days or 10 days of that, eventually the person starts seeing that from the assessment of the people involved, you're both arrogant and insincere. And then you start looking at, well, what am I going to do about that?
Yep.
And the average person then digs their heels in and doesn't want to do anything. And so we don't see them ever again.
Yeah.
And we don't even see them ever again at a seminar sometimes.
But I should say on this trip there has been people who we have sent home, who've come out to Australia, who's sent home, and it's taken them 6 months or a year, and they've come to the seminar and gone, I can see what you guys were talking about, but it took me a long time.
Yeah. So some change and some don't, and more arrogant you are, the less likely you're going to change, probably.
Yeah.
Mm.
But...
So that's going to be your problem, Ace. Yep.
Just wondering, did you know that I meant like humility and practice days for like if you guys were to set a learning center here? Because I wasn't talking about Australia.
I know.
Okay, I'll just make sure.
No, we've got plenty of ideas of what we're going to do in each humility and practice day everywhere we go. The issue really though is the people who come along as participants, you need to be prepared that and also have some trust that we're going to be doing it for love's sake, not for a personal sake. So not to make you feel good about yourself or anything like that. It's going to be for love's sake, loving something else other than yourself.
Yeah, and we don't design activities in order to trigger your emotions. It's not sort of some kind of test or power manipulation. None of that.
No.
So we think honestly, you can do anything. You can wash a wall and receive feedback on your attitude in or out of harmony with love.
We found with young men, give them a cleaning job all day.
Yep.
Interesting.
Lots of young guys
Those young men can't handle it.
have no interest.
Yep.
Yeah. Can't
No
see a
interest
loving
in
purpose.
serving another person and cleaning up after other people.
Yeah.
And you can see why, because most young men have had mothers clean up after them most of their lives, right? and so they don't have any interest in it at all, and no desire to do it, and no love for people in doing it. And it's very easy to, we find generally women are more open to doing jobs, because most women have done jobs in the house, and they've done jobs in their family, and they've done a lot of it in a manner that's like not about themselves so much. Although we do also correct the whole nursing thing that women have got going on as well in the process. So.
Yes, a lot of women have been trained to look after the men who come who don't want to do jobs.
So
there's
quite
all
often
kinds
after
of
a day of work,
exposed.
all the men stand around and they all watch the women
women
clean
clean
up
up.
the utensils.
The
And
tools.
what happens the next day is none of them come, because we tell them all they can't come. And then we give them an opportunity maybe a week later to come, and if they do the same thing, then they can't come for 3 months. Does that make sense? It's like you get 1 or 2 opportunities, that's all you're going to get. Because the reason why that's all you're going to get is because we're looking for sincere people, and sincere people will be evident the day we meet them, not later. We're not trying to create sincere people. What we're trying to do is find them. And that's different than trying to create them. And we don't want to try to create sincere people. God doesn't try to make you sincere. What God does is he waits for your sincerity. Right? So this is the whole...
responds to your sincerity,
Yeah,
which is
so-
our whole ethos.
Yeah, in God's way, we're not trying to help you become more sincere. That's not our goal. Our goal is we want to identify the people who are already sincere, right? Rather than try to create a bunch of sincere people by a lot of effort, right? Because we found if you put, just as God knows, we've found that if you put effort into insincere people trying to make them sincere, then they're only sincere because of an insincere reason.
And
so therefore they remain insincere.
Yes, and usually they become demanding for the input, which means that, we're then serving them rather than them
That's right.
serving the organisation.
Or serving others, serving people, which is the purpose of the organisation.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of very sort of fundamental principles that the organisation imbibes, which is not... Mary and I teach these things, and anybody can come to one of our seminars. Anybody. You can be... Many of you don't realise it yet, but many of you are so demanding. We find you so demanding, almost unbearably demanding, to be frank, many of you. And yet we still let you come to our seminars, right? And that's because we want to give you the opportunity, no matter what condition you're in, to be able to start to understand God's truth, right? But the purpose of God's way isn't to do that. The purpose of God's way is to find sincere people and have them help us share truth with others.
So part of the goals of God's way is to help distribute divine truth to the world. So actually being involved in God's way means that you have a similar objective to what in your heart. Every member must have in their heart a similar objective to Jesus and I, which is to help others to learn God's truth. Yeah.
And you'll find when you meet them, it's pretty plain they do. Like, you look at the 3 directors, their whole life is it. They don't, like as Mary said, do anything else with their life. Their whole life is it. They're totally about like teaching the truth to others. That's what they're about. They're not about, but they're not about nursing people into things. They're about presenting truth and then seeing how people respond, which is exactly what we're really doing with you, actually. Presenting some truths and then just seeing what you do with that. Like, if you do something with that in a sincere manner, we and you will be working together probably in the future somehow. But if you don't do that in a sincere or loving manner, then we will not be working together in the future, probably at all. Does that make sense? Because we need a team of people who have that level of sincerity in order to do the things that we have as goals to do.
If God's truth is going to be learned on earth, then every person sharing it has to be a person who says, even if nobody else in the world agrees with this or wants this or does this, I want to do it.
And even if everybody's angry with me and nobody likes me, and I'm still going to do it.
Yep.
Okay.
And that, in order to have that level of sincerity, it must be in your heart. It must be have.
So
Different.
the primary purpose for the God's Way organisation is not to create sincere people, it's to find them.
And to engage with them.
Make sense? Yep.
Okay.
So if you want to become sincere, well, that has to be your creation. And you can understand, given the principles I just taught you this morning, why that would be the case, right? Because that has to be something that comes from within yourself. And somebody else can't encourage you to do it. They can present truths to you, and then it's up to you what you do with those truths, right? And this is the thing, a lot of people have this projection, particularly at myself, less so at Mary perhaps, but they have this sort of projection that I'm not doing enough to help them become sincere, or I'm not doing enough to help them receive God's love. No, I'm every moment of my day is spent helping people, learn the truth.
Yeah.
But it is not my purpose, and nor my role, nor my responsibility to encourage you to do it. Right? If you can't see personally the benefits of you doing it yourself, then there's not much I can do to help you about that. Right?
And any effort would be short-lived anyway.
Yeah. So very important to understand that this is your personal life we're talking about here, not your life integrating with ours in some way. It's your personal life, your personal experience, your desire, your passion, your longing, your soul. Your soul can be happy. Your soul can be sad. It just depends on what choices your soul makes, your feelings you make. And God's way is just there to help identify the people who are making those changes. Right?
Or can we say the humility and practice days are there to help identify the people?
Yeah.
The organisation itself is about creating
Sharing.
these centres where we can give gifts to the world.
To others.
Yeah.
So you get a team of 50 people, imagine, that all have this passion where they're not worried about money anymore. They're not worried about, themselves much anymore in the sense of needing approval or acceptance or power or any other warped sense of the reason why they want to do something, but rather they're just driven by the love they have for people to help people as much as they're able without sacrificing their love of self. So imagine you had 50 people in one place like that. You imagine what would happen to everybody visiting that place. It would be like visiting a different world, wouldn't it?
A different
Compared to
sphere, if it was
which is what we're trying to create, right? Yeah, so it's like visiting and seeing it in practice. It's like seeing the principles of God's truth in practice, day-to-day life practice. This is what it looks like. This is what you'll do,
This is how you will run a team. This is how you'll interact with each other. This is how you'll raise a child. This is how you'll, build a house. All of these things. Imagine the power of just coming to... You're not getting lectured about it. You're seeing it happen. And,
very powerful.
We have a big faith that would be very inspiring for people.
It also then, one of the purposes of God's Way is that eventually we have a centre where we have an auditorium that Mary and I can come, and other people who are also in the right condition can come and share more truth. So eventually it could turn out that there's more and more people who are able to share that truth, and they can do some lectures at that location. And everyone, after a while, people in the local community, but eventually in the country, they realise, we can go there to learn that. We can go to that space to learn that. So our goal in the long run is to have sort of a centre that also has auditorium, is self-sufficient with its food production, self-sufficient with its water as well, self-sufficient with survivability sort of thing, but also is there to just demonstrate, but also share truths, share God's truths that are being taught to anybody who wants to come and visit. And we foresee there will be regular events run by all sorts of people. Such things like we might come to a site and run an event for a week, and then we go away, and then for the next 3 months, someone who's well skilled with regard to God's way might come and say, let's run 3 months of humility and practice days for 5 days of the week for 3 months. Does that make sense? And you get a taste of it like every day of your life for 3 months. That kind of thing.
So lots of different endeavours on these learning centres, and some of these are in their infancy, these kinds of projects like food and the environment, recovery, education of children, water management. We've already got a lot of ideas and sort of the initial parts of projects happening. But one of the key desires in Australia on one of the learning centres in the next 5 years is we would like to build an auditorium. So that we can hold regular events where a space is already set up for us to come and we don't have to hire
anywhere. Not just for us,
anywhere.
but also for other directors who we feel are in a good space to go and teach as well.
And a lot of the directors already have the condition and the knowledge to give presentations about things like environmental recovery and construction
and bringing up children,
education of children, parenting and so forth. So the auditorium that we build could already be in use year round, whether we're there or not.
So we're hopeful that we'll be able to use them when we go to a place, but at the end of the day they'll be used all the time, you know, not just when Mary and I are there.
Cool. All right, any other questions about that? No? Everyone's scared now to come because...
Well, it's better we say up front.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Because we've found for some that, you know, they've arrived with expectations that were not realistic, and it's been disappointing for them when they've been asked to go, you know. But it's better if you know up front what's going to be, you know, what's going to be required of you. Not expected, required.
I have a question about the environmental part that you mentioned. The government of Costa Rica actually 40 years or 50 years ago took bunch of land in different places of the country and put native plants there, and the birds now come and live there, a lot of colorful birds. And they have, it's just a divine place to go and walk around and, you know, meditate, and it's easy, it's not difficult to walk around in there. Am I thinking correctly that you want to do something along those lines?
Partially.
That's a big part of the learning centres, create environments to demonstrate how you can come from a very depleted and damaged land and restore biodiversity to it, and by the density of vegetation, native animals, insects. We love insects and we love microbial life, all the way up from that all the way up to, you know, mammals and birds and stuff. So that's a big... Well, I think it's something that we're already
it's already
in the process
happening. We've got heaps of documentation that hasn't been published. And the main reason why it hasn't been published is because we don't have any helpers to do the publishing. But there's heaps of documentation about things we've already done that's improved the environment quite markedly, just in a short period of time, like 6 or 7 years. One of the areas that we rehabilitated was the area where for 12 years it didn't have a blade of grass growing on it. And now it's got trees that are higher than the ceiling here, a bit higher than...
When we first started the project, we'd go out at dawn in the summer and we were sort of breaking dirt just to reintroduce seeds and different matter to the ground. And I used to play a game with the participants, like who can spot a living thing, because there was just not an insect, there wasn't a grass, there was hardly a bird. You'd see birds way off in the distance.
Not even ants.
No ants, nothing.
Or worms or anything.
And now you go up there and it is just teeming. And it's birds and insects and snakes and lizards and
and we get so
really
many
wonderful.
seeds from the plants that a lot of the plants are growing so many seed that they're breaking their own branches with the load of seed that they actually have. You know,
I look forward to your vision manifestation. Thank you.
It's a lot of fun to be a part of, and people who've come. So there's been people from overseas who've come 1 year, you know, to sort of participate in a humility and practice day, and come back 2 years later or something, and they're like, one girl said to me, "Is this the same place we were in? I can't even recognise it anymore."
There's so much seed sometimes on the ground at the end of that. There's a layer of seed that thick just all over the entire ground. and it all decomposes and is used for food by different animals and so forth for the year, but it's just like masses of it, and it's just quite fascinating what happens when you love the thing.
Yeah.
What.
For people who are wondering, they're called cloud forests.
Cloud forests in Costa Rica.
In Costa Rica.
Yeah.
They have
Cloud forest.
frogs that are this tiny. You can trample if you don't look carefully.
Yeah, that's right.
They
Yeah.
have spiders, and
Yeah.
birds, and
It's so wonderful, God's creation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the wonder of that is being lost because humans are dominating with their soul condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see, everywhere we've gone on this trip, you see just so much devastation. We, in the middle of like Austria's forests, in the middle of the Alps, so much devastation. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. We went through an 18-kilometre trek through the Alps in the forest, and we saw maybe 2 birds, maybe. And
a couple of insects.
I can't remember seeing hardly any insects at all.
Yeah. I remember as we were coming
a few
down.
maybe,
we saw a couple.
when we were coming down. But hardly any life there at all. We talked to some of the people who were locals, and they said, it's been happening like that for the last 30 years, where things are just getting less and less and less and less till they disappear altogether. And they're calling this a pristine Alps. And it's like absolutely devastated. But when if you went to look there, many of you would think it's lovely. This is what we noticed in North Carolina. Most people are going, this is so lovely, and we're going, so wrecked. And people have no contrast of what the difference is. One advantage we have is that we've looked at a lot of places on Earth before we came here, and also for hundreds of years before then. So we have a good contrast of what was there and what is there now. For the average person on Earth, they barely even read history to find what was there, before. And so what you see in your life is generally just when you were born or when you were a young person, you saw one thing, and then 50 years later you see a different thing. And a lot of times the change between those two periods is not as great as you greatly affected. You're not emotionally affected by that change very much. But you've got to remember there's generations of people who have lived who've seen the same change, and each generation is experiencing less life, less variety, less everything. And we don't even, it's about your awareness creep, like when you're like, most of us are like, frogs in
hot water.
Put in cold water and then brought to the boil. We don't know the water's changed. And we're sitting in it and we still don't know, because we're desensitised to it. And this is what's happening world over with regard to the environment in particular. So what they call like global warming, for a large part, is to do with the devastation that humans have placed upon the environment for purposes they justify, such as food, eating meat, for example, and other purposes. And all of these things are causing absolute devastation to the environment, to the point where there's thousands of species of, not just mammals. See, most people just measure mammals with regard to extinction, but there's thousands of species of insects right the way through to mammals dying every day and never coming back. Like, they won't. Fortunately, with the insects, many of them might, because they go into diapause and things like that. But a lot of the bigger creatures, going to be very hard to get them back. Yeah.
Sadly. Heather?
Patty Matthews was suggesting to me the idea of a learning center with reclaiming an abandoned mine there in the western Appalachian area.
Yep.
What do you guys think about that idea?
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah, there's certain things that, one of the things we want to do is
Yeah.
reclaim a desert, and other things we'd like to do is reclaim things that are done by mining, or in Australia we're doing it with farming, reclaiming farming land. And we want to be able to illustrate a lot of different things. Of course, it's going to take people first rather than the place first.
We should sort of say, the basis of the organisation is people.
People first.
People first,
we want to love the people first. So, you know, a lot of people say, oh, are you going to look for land? Well, we'll drive through the place and have a look around, you know, and see the place there. But fundamentally, we're looking for people first who have that sort of strong desire for God's truth and God's way, living it. Because you get them, and now you can do almost anything great.
Yeah.
You know, when you've got a bunch of people who are like that.
And the people really are the basis of any learning centre, because without them it's just a piece of land, you know.
Yeah.
But if you have people with God's way in their heart, then they become the centre that people visit, you know, and we
when
can
you
participate
visit a
together.
centre, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because if you're visiting a centre and the people there will be able to show you what it means, you know. But if you take the people out, what's left is just the land, you know, and the average person won't learn much at all under those circumstances. You need the people.
Yeah. Anyway, it's exciting times for us in Australia, being involved in all of this. And if you do wish to come, godsway.net, under the Get Involved tab. But you have had your warning about how it all works. You are now
it's not just a warning, it's
educated.
Yeah.
Well, we actually think the way that we run things is really great, actually. You know, and people who are sincere get a lot from the experience.
Well, it's God's way. It's great.
Yeah. It's not like we don't feel great that we did it. We just feel like it's great that there's a bunch of people who are so interested in God's way, even if it's only 5 of us really at the moment. There's more than 5, isn't there? How many members?
I think there's 8 or 9
at the moment.
Yeah.
And a few more volunteers who are, you know, aspiring to become members. But, you know, having that many people together, even though that sounds like not many, it's actually a lot of fun. And, it's very rewarding because it's people interested in God's way.
No, there's 6, isn't there?
Members,
I think.
Yeah. And then 4 volunteers?
Yeah, something like that.
I think so.
Not many.
And then in terms of participants...
That's after 8 years of effort on our part.
There's probably about 30 participants who come when Jesus and I are in Australia, who come regularly. And some of the...
When we're not there, it dies down to like 12 or 10 or whatever.
So you can see why those people aren't yet volunteers or members.
Because they're not sincere, right?
They don't have a desire to give gifts under every circumstance.
Yeah.
So and a lot of the unpublished recordings have come from just lunch discussions that we've had with people after a humility and practice day or something. So there's a lot of good learning opportunities in
really
ways.
lively discussions.
Yes, and the more people get in harmony with God's way, the more willing they are to be themselves, the less facade. There's no topic off limits. We talk about all kinds of things and apply God's principles to everything. Yeah.
In Graham Group, we said from vaginas to, you know, like engineering.
Yeah, we talked about Brazilian waxing all the way through to like how to build
and how
in
unloving
cities.
it is.
So,
right the way through to other subjects, right?
But it's really fun because people just want to engage with the truth and they're less worried about like guarding how other people feel about them or view them. And so that's always a lot of fun. Yeah. All right, you guys. Anything else before we finish up? Nope. Alicia?
No.
You're just
ready
getting
to
ready.
Clap. You want to get rid of us already. So over here.
Thank you for letting me come. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Boris said something about first century, and it struck me, and I was sitting here and feeling what's happening, and I realized I'm Armenian, and we basically failed to implement that stuff, because there were letters and things like that, and some of the early Christian communities right after you left, and there were a whole bunch of people in the regions that felt you and lived, but it didn't happen. Like the people on top tried to force it, and the people on the bottoms, but it failed.
And can you see why it failed? Because someone was trying to force it. You know, you can't force God's way.
Not the only probably reason.
But not just that, because we really didn't want to live by those laws.
Yeah.
We really didn't want to. And there was so much arrogance to the point where when I was sitting with all of the genocides and all of those things that happened, so much of that was the energy of arrogance that brought that.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm very happy you came back to Earth. Because it's been a burden. I remember looking at you on a video and I went like, whoa, almost fell, because it's for generations we claimed to do it.
Yeah.
We sang the songs.
Yeah.
We did our best to paint your face. And nothing.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I in particular, probably Mary less so, feels like, in the sense that, like, a lot of people on Earth for the last 2,000 years have basically presented to the rest of the world that they're following the way we taught.
Yeah, I feel pretty passionate about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the reasons why we wanted to return was that we wanted to show people, no, you haven't been following the way we've taught. And in fact, there's been so much distortion of what we taught then that what we see on Earth now with regard to Christianity is unrecognisable compared to what we taught. And, you know, once you have the ability to be able to come back, which, you know, like I said earlier, we realised in 1935, equivalent of that time on Earth, that we could, you sort of start to develop a longing to come back, because it's like it gives you all this potential opportunity to address the lack of truth everywhere, but particularly in the very thing that claims to be the thing that you set up. Like, you know, Christianity claims that they're following my teachings, and yet in a lot of ways they're blasphemous towards my teachings. Yeah. And so, you know, this is something that we've been concerned about for a long time, and once we found the opportunity, the possibility of coming back, we wanted to. And the reason why coming back is effective is because it gives you the chance again to say it all face to face. And then on top of that, in this life, there's technology and recordings and other things which all can assist the process. But as you know, sitting in front of your telly, it's not the same experience as being confronted face to face about matters. And so this is why Mary and I want to do these trips coming up, you know, as Mary mentioned earlier, with Divine Truth. So even though there's all this God's Way things happening, we sort of see the God's Way things as still quite secondary to us being able to share God's truth with people all around the earth. And God's Way, hopefully, with the people who are developing God's Way, will then be able to carry forward the assistance that is required or given by their desire, by a small group of people's desire to share, to continue sharing that truth even when Mary and I are not around. And this is why, you know, it's important for us that both things occur. And this is also why, for the last 8 years, we've spent a lot of our time establishing, like, God's Way in Australia first, so that we can at least get, you could say, a blueprint sorted out as to what may be able to happen in other countries. So we're very keen to see these things happen in other countries, but again, it's going to be based upon the love people have and that developing. And we see there's a lot of opposition to that. And to be honest, there's also a lot of desire for that, but it's confused desire, I would call it. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of people around the world seeking truth, but they don't think they're going to hear it from a guy in Australia claiming to be Jesus. And they generally, therefore, also feel that it's also quite difficult to find what that truth would be from other sources. And so a lot of people would like there to be truth, but when someone like myself starts to say, well, this is the truth, they then go, oh, you know, that's just a cult leader trying to get a cult started and all those kind of things. Now, as you can see from what we've described, we're not trying to get a cult started. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get information shared. That's our goal. So when people ask us, what do you do for your life? We say we're public speakers. We teach spiritual truths. We're public speakers who teach spiritual truths. And they say, you know, oh, what's your website? So search a website, and then they go, oh, you're saying you're Jesus. I say, yeah, I am Jesus, but all I am is a public speaker sharing spiritual truths, you know. I'm not God's, you know, special son in the sense of special, in the sense of unique to, you know. I'm not anything more worthy than yourselves. We're not any better than yourselves, except for the fact that we have received more of God's love, and also we've also received more of God's truth, right? And that's the only thing that's different between you and I. Aside from your personalities, of course, which are all different to mine. Thank goodness, right? Imagine if we had to deal with 100 AJs in the room or 100 Jesus in the room. That'd be pretty tough. I'd find that tough. I think I'd have to go somewhere else. But now that I've got 100 of you in the room, or 50, 60 of you in the room, I can enjoy it a lot more, right? And so the key thing to do is to learn how to become yourself, but also to apply the truths. Like, if you apply the truths, happiness is going to be the result. And if you don't apply the truths, you'll kick yourself later. You will, because at some point down the track, and probably in the spirit world, if you don't apply them now, in the spirit world after you've passed, you'll realise you had an opportunity to apply them while you're on earth, and you could have made a whole heap of changes while you're on earth, and you could have enjoyed your life on earth better, as well as when you arrived in the spirit world, it would have been more enjoyable as well. And so, you know, when you look back with regret, sometimes the regrets are worse than any other feeling. As when Mary channeled Eugene, remember yesterday, was it, or the day before? Yesterday. You know, you can see from him that his regrets were pretty potent in the sense of his pain. Because he realised, oh, I didn't live the life on earth I could have lived, and I didn't do the things I could have done. And if I was just more brave, and I was just more focused on the truth, and I was just more sharing it with other people, and I just took it on board internally as well. You know, I changed my internal assessment of myself, things would have been heaps different. So that's what we'd like to encourage you to do. We're glad we're here to share some truths with you. We're glad that you've given us 3 days of opportunity, and some of you, well, 8 days of opportunity while we've been in San Diego to present some truths. So we're very glad that you've done that for your own sake, and we're glad we had an audience too, because it's a bit hard rocking up to share truths and there's nobody there to share truth with. Like, so all we'd be doing then is having a conversation amongst myself and Mary, and that would be it. So we're glad for you to be part of the audience, to be here, to be involved and share with it. But what we'd be more glad about is if you actually had some faith in it and actually practiced it. That's the thing that would bring us a lot of joy to see. And we don't know whether we're going to see you, when we're going to see you next, really, do we? Like, for some of you, you might be dead by next year. We don't know. This is what happens, isn't it? Like, some of you may be in different countries. Some of you may have made different decisions. We don't know where you will be when we see you next. But if you've practiced and start to feel about your practice of God's truth, can you see wherever you are, you will have benefited from it? Yeah. And that's the thing we'd love to see. You benefit from it. Yeah. Vijay, you want to...
Thank you so much for your time. I don't know how it happened, but one of the experiences I had around both of you several months ago was the level of humility in your soul. I had this intense feeling, and I'm not sure whether it's my spirit friends who gave it to me, but the level of humility in your soul, I know you talk about humility, but I have never run into anything even close to that in my interactions with people on earth.
Every day we remind ourselves, be humble, be humble,
Always
be
be more
humble,
humble.
be more humble.
Yeah.
But the flavor of your soul, that humility element was just so strong in the feeling that I got. And it was just, a reference point for me, I guess, going forward.
Yeah.
In
All the benefits we've enjoyed from receiving God's love have come from our desire for truth, our faith in God, and being humble.
And, humility is the one aspect that is really dependent on you. Love and truth and these things exist.
External to you.
They're external and we can desire them and receive them, but humility is the thing that we have to develop inside of
two things,
ourselves.
humility and faith.
Yeah.
They depend on you. You're not going to be gifted them. Not everybody has them. Many of you have been indoctrinated away from faith and away from humility through the course of your life. And they are the things that are going to benefit you the most in your relationship with God. The more you get to know about God, the more you realise, wow, this is just so amazing. And isn't it amazing how little I know?
Yes.
It's just absolutely amazing.
The more you grow on this path, the more you understand how much you have to learn, and how much.
How little you know.
Yeah. And the beauty of humility, if I can say this, humility is the quality that leaves you open to learning more things. So the more humble you become, the more you will learn. You understand? So without humility, learning is not possible. And the main reason why Mary and I have learnt the most of all the people who have ever lived on this earth, and we have, and that's not a statement of error, it's just a statement of fact, is because we've been more open to receiving that truth than any others. And the main reason why that's been the case is because we've been more humble. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
the more humble you are, the more you're able to absorb new information without rejecting it, without pushing it away from yourself. The more humble you are. And this is why developing the quality of humility is so essential for your future. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, having the faith that God will reward your humility by giving you truth. Right? So the way it sort of works emotionally is the more humble I am, the more truth I can receive and actually feel in my soul. And so you can see that as far as it depends upon me, the humility is one of the most important things I need to develop. So when we say to you as a group, many of you are very arrogant, the reason why we say that is you don't understand the problem of being very arrogant.
The limits
it's placing upon you. The limits it's placing upon your ability to learn and your ability to change. As soon as you become arrogant, you're basically putting huge blocks to the absorption of truth in your soul. And that's going to cause huge problems for your future, because the more you resist the truth, the more unhappiness is probably going to be the result. Truth is what opens up all of your future for happiness. And so the quality of humility is such that unless you develop it, you will find yourself very resistive to truth at all times, and therefore very resistive to making changes in harmony with what God's design of you is. So I find the quality of humility so important, because without it, and this is why I keep saying to many of you, without this humility, the emotional absorption of truth becomes impossible. And the net result of that is going to be, you're going to be living in a lie. And the net result of living in a lie is unhappiness every single time. Every single time. So you can intellectually believe you believe, while at the same time have no truth in your soul whatsoever, right? Because of the lack of humility that exists in your soul to be able to absorb truth. Yeah. And so a person who's humble absorbs truth easily. You don't keep your own opinions anymore. They don't matter anymore. It doesn't matter what you think anymore. It doesn't matter what you have to feel anymore. Your emotions don't matter anymore either, because if you've got to feel what you've got to feel, well, feel it, you know. There's no other answer to that than just feel it. If you've got to let go of false beliefs you have, well, let them go, because the more you let them go, the more humble you become, and the more humble you become, the more truth you'll absorb. And so the only way that you're going to find yourself progressing for your future is to develop those two primary qualities, humility and faith. Humility and faith. The truth is external. The only way it's going to become internal, remember we started our discussion, didn't we, on Friday like this? Yes. The truth is external. The only way it's going to become internal is by you exercising faith, which, remember we said this morning, is a soul aspiration for it, and then also by being humble, because without humility you will not absorb the truth presented. You will not be able to. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, in summary, when I did the homework yesterday, that's what came out.
Yeah.
The level of resistance inside me that I had to work on in different areas in my life was the theme of the individual things.
Yeah. And so after a while, what happens, Vijaya, is you end up recognizing that actually it's almost like forget everything else for a moment. There's really only two things I need to do. Right? So you know how most of us are worried about our life, and we're worried about our families, and we're worried about, getting enough money to live, and we're worried about all sorts of things. Really, there's only two real things that we really need to worry about that is going to help the rest of our life. And the first one is to develop a soul aspiration to change in harmony with God's love. The second is to develop the humility to accept God's truth. They're more important for your life than any other pursuit you could have. And ironically, by pursuing those two things, a lot of other truthful things will come to you that you'll also enjoy pursuing, right? So, but if you have that as your primary pursuit, a lot of things will change. As I said, I think on Friday, seek first that kingdom and everything else will be added to you. All the knowledge you can imagine, all the experiences you can imagine, all the love that is available to you, that you can imagine, far beyond what you can imagine, is available to you as long as those two qualities are developed. If you don't develop them, then the opposite is also true. They will not be available to you. The love will not be available to you. The truth will not be available to you. It will not enter your soul. It will enter your mind, but your mind's pretty useless. It's a tool used by your body to function, and it's incapable of true assessment of anything. It's capable of some logic at times, but only when the soul doesn't have opposing emotions. And so, at the end of the day, it's not really very logical, and this is why there's many spirits who come to talk with us, Mary and I, over the course of many years, and they think they're going to trick me with their logic, many of them. So there is all these spirits who come, natural love spirits in particular, and as soon as we boil down to some functional things, they're going, this logic is so confronting because it's based on the truth, and a person can be, if they're connected emotionally with themselves and connected to their soul, connected to faith and humility, you will become an extremely logical person by doing this as well. But it will be logic based upon what's going to benefit your soul, not your mind. And it will be a feeling-based logic. Feelings will appear. So this is how many of you ask me a question and I'm off, right? And, when I say I'm off, I don't mean I smell. I mean that, you ask me a question and I answer it pretty much instantly. And that's all based upon what your soul is capable of doing. You don't have to think about things so much. Your mind can't sort things out. And there's, in your future, you'll find if you continue to progress God's way, you won't hardly need your mind at all, and you'll be using your emotions all the time to assess, and it will be all loving assessments as to what is truth. So that's what we'd recommend for you. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just one other question, which is probably on a different topic, but related. One of my Catholic friends who came for one day and didn't come back and quoted John 14. I'm not a Bible. I don't claim to know the Bible, but I did look up that verse about where you say, "I am the way, and the way to the Father is only through me."
Yeah.
And so his logic was, well, I have to believe in Jesus being special, because without that, if he were like us.
Yeah, but I wasn't saying when I said those words, I did say those words, but I wasn't saying that I'm special. I was saying, like, the very first person who learnt these truths was myself. So the way you're going to learn them is from somebody that I've shared the truth with, whether that's me personally sharing it with you or somebody I've already shared a truth with that's sharing it with you. That's just the way it is. It's like there's a first person doing everything. There's a first person who designed the first plane. There's a first person who started doctoring. There's a first person who started every form of thing you can think of on earth. If there was somebody who was first, I just happen to be first at this thing, right? Now, there's a benefit to listening to the person who was first, and that is they probably know the most about it. It's just the way it works, right? They've had the longest experience with it, of course. So our soul has had the most experience with God's love than anyone that has come from this earth. I'm not saying from other earths. From other earths, there are similar people to ourselves who were first. And we will remain the first because we were the first. It's as simple as that. That's how it is. It's just when you're first, well, that's what it means, So listening to somebody who's the first is going to help you, not out of a competition or anything like that, but because they will show you the way. And that's why I said in the first century, I am the way. If you follow my life, you'll follow the way. How I live my life is the way, right? That's the way God taught me to live, and that's the way that I'm teaching you to live. And it's one way. It's not multiple ways. There's one way. And that's why I became the way. It was just through being the first one who found that truth. That's all. And to me, it's a unique. The feeling in me is that it's a unique privilege, right? And so I am very aware that without God's help and without the help of some of my spirit friends in the first century, I probably wouldn't found the way, right? So I don't even sort of see that it's me finding the way. It's just, it came upon me sort of thing through God's help and through the help of others, and many others actually, some of whom are still helping Mary and I today. And so for me, it's just, we found the way, this is the way, it works, it's God's way. If you can follow the way, it'll be great for you too. You know what I mean? And there's no sense of, there's no sense of competition or superiority or feeling that we're special in any way, aside from the fact that we're first, right? There had to be someone that was, and we happen to be the first. So when people quote these verses, which actually come from things that I have actually said, frequently they misunderstand those things that I've said. So the very man, was it a man, I think?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Who came, the Christian man who came, first weekend in San Diego, wasn't it? And, said he couldn't listen anymore because he wants to believe Jesus is the way. Well, ironically, I am. But he just didn't recognise it, which is quite sad in a way, because he was expecting something else. He was expecting someone who was superior or acted like he had to be honoured and respected and whatever. That's not how we feel. So, And we're never going to feel that. And other Christians expect what, other books of the Bible say, that I'm going to come with a horde of angels, which, by the way, I have. We have lots and lots of celestial brothers and sisters who are helping us on what we're trying to achieve on earth. And so I have come with them, but they just can't see them, of course, so they don't recognise that. But they also say that he'll come and destroy the wicked. Well, that's something I'm never going to do either. God won't even do that, so why would I do it, right? Then I'm portrayed in the book of Revelation as a man riding a white horse coming in the clouds, to destroy the wicked and redeem the righteous and reward the righteous with everlasting life. I can't do that. It's not mine to give, right? God give you that, everlasting life. And whether it's immortal life or not, well, that's going to be determined by how much of God's love you receive. So a lot of these things that are said in the Bible, there are explanations to them, but the average person's not prepared to have a conversation long enough to look at the explanation. Yeah. And this is what we found on Wednesday when we had a chat with our minister friend. It was the same thing. He wasn't prepared to sit long enough with the answers to even understand their explanation. And we find that everywhere we go. And that's just a general drawback of being Jesus, to be honest. If I wasn't claiming I was Jesus, a lot of times the people would probably listen more closely to what's being said sometimes because they feel like, oh, that's an interesting thought. But because of the Jesus thing, they're often going, oh, he's saying he's Jesus, so it can't be true, that kind of thing. And so it creates a difficulty, but at the end of the day, it's not a difficulty that we didn't foresee. We foresaw that difficulty would be there, but it's still a necessary part of what we teach. Because to be truthful with you, we have to be truthful about who we are. And if we thought we were Jesus and Mary, but we'd never said that to you, that would be very dishonest on our part to do that. So that's something that we can't do. Even though many of you would like us to ignore that we are such people,
Yes.
So
people say that to us.
Yeah, a lot of people say that to us. If only you could just
not say that.
Not say that. If only you had never said that, then I could listen to you. We've had that said to us thousands of times, actually. And you should see how many, our inboxes are full of Christian people emailing us about the very people who say they're following me, emailing me, telling me why I can't be Jesus. And giving me a lot of Bible verses as the explanation as to why, without any understanding whatsoever about what I'm teaching or anything else. And in a lot of ways, I just felt like saying, and in the future I probably will say to people who are ministers and other things like that, I just say, well, it's a very silly thing to presume an understanding without question. And what I mean by that is it's a very silly thing to presume Mary and I, just by claiming we're Jesus and Mary, to presume that means a lot of other things. That's a very silly thing to do. You've never met us, historically. There's things written about us from 2,000 years ago. Anything else that's been written from 2,000 years ago is hardly recognisable to now. So why would you expect that anything written about us would be very recognisable? We're not the people who the Bible claims we were. And even the other half of my soul, Mary, was only mentioned like 3 or 4 times in the Bible. And she was with me for
the entire
time. Once we met, she was pretty much, there was a short period of time when she wasn't with me, but after that, with me the entire time.
Nearly in all the gospel accounts, I was there.
The entire time.
The entire time.
Almost, right. Yeah. So from the time of shortly after I began my so-called public ministry in the first century, Mary was with me the entire time and hardly mentioned. How did that happen? How do you not mention the wife of the person you say, you're listening to even, right? There's something wrong there, right? But this is the thing, is that people make all these presumptions about us, and then say, because of those presumptions, what you're teaching cannot be true. To their own detriment, of course. So this is something that we hope we will be able to correct in the future. One of the things we're hoping to do is to have proper debate about false beliefs on the planet. You know, the false religious beliefs that are in every religion. We would like to raise issues that this can't be false, this can't be true because, this is false because. You know, we would love to start these debates, but at the moment, the way that everyone gets to ignore whatever we say is by saying, well, they're claiming to be Jesus, so we can just, or Mary, and so we can just ignore what they say. Now, there'll come a time in the future where it's going to be harder and harder to ignore what we say, right? And it's going to be interesting to see what happens then. And but I'm looking forward to the time when we can have proper discussion about the flaws of all religious faiths on earth, the flaws of lots of different beliefs, because the more you can expose the belief systems that are false, the higher likelihood there now is of people wanting to find out what is true, right? So this is one reason why we do need to have a discussion about what is false, and so that we can discount what is false and focus more attention about what is true. And the more people become aware of why it's false, you know, how love is the measure of everything, they'll be able to also then work out what's false in their own life as well. If love is the measure of everything, they can work out that too. So we're looking forward to that time. Obviously, by Mary and I travelling, there's more potential exposure to that time. But still, the main focus of the spirits who follow us around attacking us is to just attack who we are so that people don't listen to what we teach. Yeah. So even though those of you who are not convinced about who we are, we would suggest to you, don't worry about that so much. Focus on what we teach.
You'll find the benefits in what we teach.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you apply it with understanding, if you grasp it emotionally and then apply it, you will benefit, and then you'll realise it's true.
Yeah.
What we teach is true.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's what I love about God's truth is just the more you apply it, the better it gets. But you just have to apply one thing that we teach and life gets better. And that helps you to build faith. A lot of people stumble with the very first things, you know.
Yeah.
Humility, changing beliefs.
Yeah, basically they stumble with their global error of how they deal with their emotion.
Yeah.
That's where there's the majority of problems. And if you can just address faith in that area alone, you will make some major changes in your life.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. If you can just understand how the soul works and just go, my brain and my soul is my emotion, and just understand it at that level, then at least you might then, and have some faith in that, then you can make some very significant changes in your life into more happiness just by understanding that one thing. Yeah.
And yeah.
So that's what we'd like to encourage you to do.
And encourage you in your relationship with God, in prayer.
Yeah.
And, you know, something that Eugene, I think, said to someone yesterday was just placing yourself in the position of prayer is a very beautiful thing, actually. It opens you, and whether or not your prayer is sincere yet or not, it will become more sincere if you are genuine in your attempts to pray.
Yeah.
It will show you your blocks, and if you're humble to those, you will become more and more sincere until you do have a proper longing for God's love. And once you establish that relationship, then everything can change. You will appreciate your brothers and sisters who are further progressed, but you will know that God is the authority in your life, and you will seek that. And,
yeah.
Thank you.
So that's what we'd encourage you guys to do over the coming years. And we hope to see some highly developed individuals who have done some of these things about their soul by the time we see you next, is what we're hoping.
Bursting full of aspiration.
That's right, yeah. We'll see whether that happens or not. But, that's going to depend, isn't it, almost totally on your own aspiration, on whether you develop that quality of aspiration. Yeah.
But I just want to mirror your comments there about thank you for your participation. Your participation in these groups that we hold really helps us to explain and draw out and demonstrate all the principles that we want to teach to many people. And you coming and participating and being yourself, and the more you do that, the better our discussions become. So thank you for being here and doing that.
Yeah, it's great. All right, guys. Well, it's time for ending the day.
Yes.
So, thank you. Thanks, guys. There's obviously there's a few of us that are going to tidy up, and Mary and I have got to know where everything goes, so there's not a lot you can do to help us do this tidy up process.
The thing you can do is just pick up all of your personal belongings, any rubbish or trash, you call it here, don't you, that you might see around, and try to leave the space clean and tidy.
And if those of you around the speakers could just stack up a few chairs so that away from the speakers so we can take everything down, that would be fantastic.
All right.
Thank you for your donations. We'd just like to say that before we say see you.
Yep.
And we look forward to seeing you, maybe in North Carolina or here.
2025.
In 2025.
Or maybe in Australia. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
All right, guys. See you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.